Hello and welcome to the latest edition of SO Live. And you guys have been asking for quite some time now for Ayman Khan to shave his beard and to get a fresh trim. And look, guys, he's done it. He's virtually unrecognisable, you could say. But no, jokes aside, I'm delighted to be joined by lean Josh Green, as Ayman is currently in Riyadh along with half the boxing world. Josh, how you doing, mate? What's with the clobber?
What's with the clobber? Perth Glory, obviously, my Aussie roots. Perth Glory supporter today. Hoping that we can see some AJ Glory on Friday night.
Fair enough. Didn't Robbie Fowler play for Perth Glory towards the end of
his?
Yeah,
he did. It's a good shout from you.
Thanks, mate. Big Robbie Fowler fan. So there you go. Perth Glory. Still in all its glory. It looks pristine. Have you worn it before?
Have I worn it before? Yeah, I've had it a couple of years, mate. Just collect my retro football stuff.
Great stuff. Well, that's what we like to see. But we go from Perth Glory to potentially Riyadh Chaos, as they're calling the show, Knockout Chaos. Bit kind of writing tickets that we're not sure if the fighters can cash. Let's hope there are a few knockouts on the show. They've got plenty of heavyweights on there, so you would expect there to be. With the biggest one being Joshua Ngannou. We will go to the chat shortly, but before we do, please give us a thumbs up if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel. We'll be covering Riyadh season. We've got Ayman Khan out there with Raheem, Radio Raheem, of course, not to be confused with any other Raheem, and Frank Trevitt, the ace man behind the camera. So they're all out there doing that. I think they've just spoken to Eddie Hearn, so that will be going up shortly. I spoke to Frank Warren on Zoom this morning, so that's on the channel now. So obviously watch all of that. Give us a subscribe, give us a thumbs up, comment, question in the live chat, and we will respond to as many as we can and read them out live. But we're going to put a poll up to kick off the show, and it's a very simple method of victory one for you gamblers out there. You're not going to win anything if you get it right from us. But Joshua against Ngannou, who wins and how? You've got the four main options. You can't pick a draw, unfortunately, although you can with the bookies if you fancy that. It's usually good odds. But let us know what you think in the poll and in the chat. Josh, as the fights got closer between Joshua and Ngannou, has your views on it changed at all, particularly in light of Ngannou's performance against Tyson Fury?
I'm not sure it's changed a huge amount in the last few weeks. I remember being on the show probably 4 or 5 weeks ago, and we were looking into what sort of value you could get for Anthony Joshua to win by decision on points. And I think it was we were looking at around 5-1, which looked like good value there. I haven't had a chance to check up and see how those odds have moved, but we've seen the power that Ngannou's got in the fight against Fury. We've seen some exhibitions of that on the punch machine on social media, and I think I spoke to a couple of people today, and Mark Tibbs told me that he thinks that Francis Ngannou has more power than Anthony Joshua. We'll see if that comes true and if he's able to use that power. But in terms of my opinion on the fight, I don't think it's really changed. I think Anthony Joshua is a better boxer, and I think he's going to be able to use that to his advantage on Friday night.
At the moment in the chat, it looks like they're mostly talking about Josh's Australian roots. Ramoni Mode XD says, "Where is Danny?" I'm not quite sure about that one. Says, "Who's Ayman out of the two of us?" Let's keep it clean. I mean, I think it could be a tougher fight than Joshua than maybe I first anticipated. I certainly went in with the school of thought that Tyson Fury had an off night against Francis Ngannou, and that flattered Ngannou to an extent. Incredibly tough man, very powerful, experienced in combat sports, but not necessarily a boxer per se. I think that's fair. And I expected Joshua, who is more of a textbook boxer than Tyson Fury. You could say Tyson Fury is more skillful, more versatile. I would not argue. But in terms of a stand-up textbook boxer, gone through the GB system, that's Anthony Joshua to a T. I mean, obviously, there's been nuances and variants of that, depending on which trainer he's working with and who the opponent is. But generally, he's a very, stand-up, good jab, good right hand to follow, footwork's on point. Joshua's a good fighter in that traditional style. And that may cause Ngannou more problems than Fury. Maybe he found Fury more predictable after he'd been in there for a while. Perhaps Fury underestimated him also. We're going to see, obviously, on Friday night. It is a Friday for people out there who may be confused about it. Apparently, it's the Grand Prix over there on Saturday, so they've made this on the Friday. I don't think people are going to be complaining. They're only 3 hours ahead of us out in Riyadh as well, so it'll be good time for us to sit down on the TV. And you've got plenty of options for which commentary and punditry teams you favour, because the show is on TNT, it's on Sky Sports, it's on DAZN, it's on everywhere, which Frank Warren's apparently really happy with. He was saying this morning, you know, he didn't quite take back all the negative things he'd said about DAZN in the past, but he did say he's focusing on the positives these days, at least until the last 10 minutes of the interview, if you want to go back and watch it at some point. DB Cooper once says, I think AJ points, but Francis needs a strong start and then stay in there waiting for a good shot. Make AJ box and he goes into a vulnerable shell where he takes 8 rounds to figure out how to land a shot. I'm also not entirely convinced about AJ's conditioning under pressure. I think he can go 12 rounds easy if he's on the back foot, popping off his shots as and when he wants, like in the Andy Ruiz rematch. But under pressure, in an actual firefight or something approximating that, I'm not so sure about his conditioning to go to 12 rounds at a good pace. We shall see. Ramoni Mode XD, I think Ngannou has a good chance to KO AJ, but AJ could tire him out with pressure early on to stamp his authority. Yeah, I mean, putting Ngannou on the back foot is not a task I would relish, but I imagine AJ probably could do that if he chose to with his better footwork and his use of angles and combination punching. Be interested to see what the game plan is from Ben Davison and the team. Derek Rossi said, it's mad how Turkey now decides who fights for belts. Eddie's saying if AJ KOs Francis, Turkey wants AJ and Undisputed next. I don't know how I feel about Turkey playing boxing god. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and there's an interview going up with Eddie and Radio Raheem quite soon on the channel where he expresses similar sentiments in that there's a good chance that there'll be a conversation after the first Fury-Usyk fight, and if Fury comes out on top in that, the rematch may well end up waiting for Anthony Joshua to have a shot at the winner if that winner is Fury. I'm not sure how easy that will be if the contract's set in stone. It is an immediate return between Fury and Usyk. I'm not sure, if Usyk loses, I'm not sure his team will be quite willing to accept stepping aside for the rematch. Usyk said before that once he becomes undisputed, he'd like to walk away from boxing. So it'll be interesting to see what happens if Usyk wins and how much market there is for an Usyk-Joshua trilogy fight, having fairly clearly defeated Joshua in the first 2 of those contests. Not only that, Joshua's going to have to make a real statement, I think, against Ngannou for that to be viable. If he struggles, labours to a points victory, I don't think that's going to increase the appetite for a Fury clash and certainly won't do anything for a third contest with Usyk. But in terms of Turki Al Al-Sheikh's power, there's not really a way around it at the moment. I mean, you've got to kind of take the sour with the sweet, if you like, because without him, a lot of these big unification fights, undisputed fights, probably won't happen because he's got the money to make it happen. And he can kind of circumvent the promotional difficulties that come up in these sort of negotiations with the money and with the fact that he'll agree to deal separately with each guy. But then you do have to take on board that he will be more powerful perhaps than the sanctioning bodies and the managers of the fighters. You've got to kind of, that's the price you pay, I suppose, is the thing there. Now, Josh, people are talking about kind of the next steps already. Do you think how much of a chance do you give Ngannou of springing an upset?
How much chance? That's a difficult one, really. I mean, I think the people within the teams and done the analysing of the game plans and look into Ngannou a bit more, they'll probably be able to sort of give you a bit more of an idea. But how much? It's interesting to know how much chance that Ngannou has. I mean, if he's going to get it done, you would like to think that it would be early on in the fight. If there's going to be a way that he's going to win the fight, it's going to be by knockout. I don't think that's any particular surprise. If it goes late and it turns into a bit of a slugfest and it's not the fight that we want to see and goes to a point, it's probably going to come out on the AJ side. So I'm not sure how much chance he has to win. I think it's a different question if you talk about Ngannou impressing. I don't think he has to win to impress necessarily. That's certainly what he did against Tyson Fury. If he scores a knockdown, he's certainly impressing against Anthony Joshua. But if he's able to nab a couple of rounds, land some big shots on Joshua, then maybe he'll change his game plan. Maybe he'll see a bit more of an opportunity in the fight. I think a lot's going to depend on how those early rounds go. And if he is able to land a big shot, then how will AJ react? And I think more importantly, how will Francis Ngannou react to that?
DB Cooper 1 here says Turkey playing God is 10 times more fair, reasonable, methodological, and ultimately better for the fans than any of the governing bodies and the constant political BS they cause. You mean sanctioning bodies rather than governing bodies. But yeah, I completely accept your point. But then it's what they say about power, isn't it? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And Turkey's only been the man in the big seat for, how long? 6 months to a year. Over time, who knows whether he could abuse that level of influence, and then things are a bit of a problem. DB Cooper 1 also has a question for Josh. He says, Josh, mate, what's behind the decision to put a sofa in front of the kitchen counter? Bit weird, no? You must be paying 3k a month for that gaff in London.
Not a gaff in London, it's a gaff in Peterborough. So the prices are a little bit different around here, but unfortunately, it's a kitchen lounge combined setup. So there's not many options, and unfortunately, the office is taken up by my other half. So unfortunately, you have the option of the bathroom or the kitchen / living room. So I'll let you decide which one you prefer.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really bother me the amount of power that Turki Al Sheikh currently has, and that could be a problem in the future, who knows. What kind of bothers me a little bit, it's something I raised with Warren this morning, was the amount of fighters, world-class heavyweights, and this could be replicated in other divisions if we see more undisputed fights, who are kind of queuing up waiting for their shot. I guess in a way, it's a lot like the old days where there was only one champion in each weight class, which a lot of fans have said in the past they harken back to, and they'd like to go back to that system. You've got the chief support on here, which we'll talk about in a minute, between Zhilei Zhang and Joseph Parker, who are currently the top-rated fighters for the WBO outside of their champion, who was Alexander Usyk. Now, if this fight was made after that belt became vacant, as many people expect it to, after the first Fury versus Usyk fight, the IBF almost certainly will be, and the WBO may well follow suit, then that would be a vacant title fight. Now, Warren was saying he would expect that if Zhilei Zhang comes through against Joseph Parker, then he wouldn't have to fight again for the vacant world title if Usyk vacates. He'll just be upgraded, which I suppose is fair enough. But then you've got someone like Zhilei Zhang waiting in the wings, or Parker if he wins, for the victor of Fury Usyk. You've got Anthony Joshua, if he gets through Ngannou, but he may still fight Hrgovic first. You've got Hrgovic himself, who's the IBF number one and has been for some time. And then you've got more outliers like Daniel Dubois, who lost to Usyk but came back with a good win against Jarrell Miller. They're all kind of queuing up now. And in a way, it's kind of nice to see that whoever comes out on top and becomes the undisputed champion will have a raft of viable challengers, all of whom have a certain level of threat. But the flip side of that is they're all kind of waiting around, and are we going to see them risk their positions by fighting other top fighters? We're seeing it in this show with Zhang and Parker. I assume there's a lot of money has helped them come to that decision. But will we see that going forward? Will you see AJ fight Hrgovic in the meantime? Or Dubois? Apparently Dubois really wants the Hrgovic fight. Will we see that one happen in advance of the Fury-Usyk rematch that we apparently will see? That's the kind of concern for me. Just going back to the chat now. Derek Rossi says, can turn around and do dishes still sat on the sofa. There you go. I mean, you assume that Josh doesn't have someone come in and do his dishes. He's an important man. Ramoni Mode XD says the bodies don't care about that. They want their sanctioning fees. Derek Rossi, if I was a fighter ranked at that weight, I'd be thinking, what's the point? Especially if I held a trinket belt paying sanctioning fees to have someone jump the queue unnecessarily. Yeah, I mean, it is unfair. And you would consider, whether you were right to pay the sanctioning fees the money, but you couldn't have anticipated, even a year ago, quite how powerful Turki Al Sheikh and the Riyadh season group seller would become. I think this has taken everyone by surprise, a pleasant surprise if you're one of the people making money from it. And it does seem like the wealth is being shared around, certainly around the top table. And I think more promoters will get involved as time goes on. But yeah, there will be certain fighters that miss out. And I guess the heavyweights waiting in the wings are part of the reason why it worries me. And it's been the same at other weights as well. Let's not forget, until recently, well, now we've got an undisputed champion at welterweight, for example. I know Boots Ennis now has kind of a share of that. But until recently, Terence Crawford had all the major belts. Before that, he had three of them. He had one of them, and Errol Spence had three. So there were a lot of people at welterweight waiting for their chance. But then they could have challenged Spence or Crawford potentially in that time. I think there was a lot of waiting around at welterweight because they didn't perhaps want to face one of the elite fighters that happened to be in the 147-pound division at the time. But yeah, I think we're going to see it at light heavyweight as well. You've got Beterbiev and Bivol going one-on-one on June the 1st on the same show as the Matchroom against Queensbury, 5 against 5. Whoever comes out on top of that is going to have a list of challengers who are all kind of queuing up for their shot. So it'll be interesting to see how that one pans out as well. But I think overall, the good kind of outweighs the bad. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what you guys think in the chat. Please let us know. Also, vote in our poll. We've just asked the method of victory for either Anthony Joshua or Francis Ngannou on Friday night. So let us know what you think there. We'll give you the poll results at the end of the show. But as I alluded to just now, it's not the only major heavyweight clash on Knockout Chaos. And with all due respect to the likes of Moses Itauma. And so actually, I don't think Moses is on this one, is he? He's on another Frank Warren show in a couple of weeks. With all due respect to any other heavyweights that may be on the bill, the one that has intrigued a lot of people, perhaps even more so than Joshua and Ngannou, is Zhilei Zhang against Joseph Parker. How are you kind of seeing this one, Josh?
Yeah, I'm really excited for this fight. And you talk about there the excitement levels compared to AJ and Ngannou, and I think I have to agree with you there. My excitement levels are much higher for this fight than they are for AJ and Ngannou. I think you've just got to look at the resumes of both of them and who they've taken on over the last number of years, and it's a really interesting matchup. Of course, Joseph Parker's got a much more extensive list of opponents, some of which he's lost to, of course. Dillian Whyte, Anthony Joshua, of course, he's lost to as well. But he's got some big names on there. Early in his career, he obviously was a former world champion, defeated Hugh Fury. Whereas Zhang, you look a bit further down past the victories against Joe Joyce, and there's maybe not quite as much depth in terms of the opponents he's faced before. So he's certainly got a lot to give in that fight. But I just look at the depth that Joseph Parker's fought and that win against Deontay Wilder. I think people have their opinions on how much Deontay Wilder had left to give, but he's the man that went out there and beat him soundly as well. So for me, just in terms of the people he's been in the ring with in a professional capacity, is probably just edging Parker for me in that one. But it's a terrific fight.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think there's parallels that can be drawn perhaps between Parker's victory over Deontay Wilder and Ngannou's close defeat to Tyson Fury, in that we were expecting a lot more from both well-known fighters, Fury and Wilder. And it's possible that those three clashes between them have taken a lot out of both men. You know, they were grueling fights, two of them. One, not so much. One was pretty dominant, one-sided in favour of Fury. But in Wilder's case, certainly the inactivity, the punishment of a, trilogy with Fury, I don't think either of those helped him going into the fight. And he didn't seem... He's always been ponderous. He's always been patient. It's two sides of the same coin, really. But it just depends how much of that was just his normal game plan and how much of it was the legacy of inactivity and hard fights. We won't know until we see Wilder back in action again. And even then we might not, because he might wipe someone out in the first 2 minutes and then we'll never find out. But yeah, we'll wait and see what Wilder decides to do going forward. But Joseph Parker, you don't want to take too much away from him. He was looking good under Andy Lee before that fight, but it isn't that long ago since he lost a grueling fight in his own right to Joe Joyce, who was since exposed, I guess, to an extent by Zhilei Zhang. So Zhang's certainly coming in on the more proven form, I guess. The first fight with Joyce went a bit longer than the second, but he was dominant in both. I know a lot of people thought Joyce was coming back into it before the first fight was stopped, because of the eye injury. But Zhang was a pretty clear victor and very conclusive the second time around with that knockout. So I kind of favour Zhang. I'm concerned about his conditioning, as I'm sure a lot of people are. He had that draw with Jerry Forrest that then uncovered some problems he was having with his kidneys, I think it was. And he had to go to hospital after that one. We saw he struggled in the second half of the fight against Filip Hrgovic, although I still felt he deserved to win. So it'll be interesting to see, because we know Parker's a proven 12-round performer, but it's whether he can hold Zhang off and stay out of the way. As for someone on social media, I can't remember who it was, so I apologise if you're watching, but said that Parker never does well against someone much heavier than him. All his best results come against smaller heavyweights, and Parker's not the biggest heavyweight himself. So he may have a point there. Zhang's a massive unit, can punch well with both hands. I just think the momentum's with him at the moment, even though he's the older man. And I do fancy him to get the job done, maybe a late stoppage, mid to late stoppage. But time will tell. It's certainly, Parker winning wouldn't be as big a shock as him beating Wilder was. So we'll wait and see. What's the chat saying? Ramoni Mode XD, I think Parker takes it if he's not knocked out early. That's kind of hedging your bets there, Ramoni Mode XD. He follows up by saying his style is good against someone like Zhang, especially with Parker's good stamina. Derek Rossi says Parker struggles with output, in my opinion, and Zhang's style is slow. Yeah, Zhang's more like a slow, persistent hammering rather than a blitz, if you like. So yeah, I can see that one. Bronx Emperor says he agrees Parker on points, but Derek Rossi says but Zhang's left hand is an elite punch. Seems to be a lot of hedging bets in the chat so far. But yeah, do tell us what you think. Maybe we should have made that as the poll instead. But yeah, Zhang against Parker. Let us know what you think. But it's a pretty stacked undercard as well. I'm going to kind of have a quick cheat peek at BoxRec in a minute. But the other world title fight on the show, and this is if you consider Zhang's won a world title fight, it's the interim belt, obviously. But Nick Ball is challenging the long reigning and fellow unbeaten Ray Vargas for the WBC title. Nick Ball's earned that mandatory position. He's been waiting for his shot. I didn't expect it necessarily to come in Saudi, but it is. Intriguing clash of styles as well. Ray Vargas, tall, lean, throws a lot of shots. Reminds me in some ways of Leo Santa Cruz. Then you've got Nick Ball, pocket powerhouse. Very well schooled, although we don't often get to see his boxing skills because he is such an adept pressure fighter. What do you make of this one, Josh? Probably one of the more exciting fights in the ring on the show.
Yeah, it's one that came a little bit out of nowhere, as you say. I mean, Nick Ball's been sort of building himself with Frank Warren for the last couple of years, and he's definitely been making strides in the ring. But to get the world title opportunity at this point in his career, and especially out in Saudi, I mean, I think I expected, and probably you expected as well, if that was going to come, it would come as a home show here back in the UK. But to get the opportunity out in Saudi, absolutely massive for him. And if you've seen what he can produce, he's been on a couple of big cards back here in the UK, at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, I think most notably. So, but if he can produce some of the performances that we've seen from him back here in the UK against a very, very credible operator in Vargas, then he's got a real chance of getting something done there. But can't overlook Vargas and look towards the opportunities and the doors that could open. It's already been mentioned, possible opportunities. I think I was actually somebody that mentioned it as a possible matchup with someone like Lee Wood, or maybe even a Josh Warrington on the Matchroom Queensbury 5v5. If that's an opportunity that's there to be taken, I'm sure he wouldn't shirk that sort of challenge, but he's got to look at the challenge in front of him in terms of Vargas, and it's another fight on the card I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, I mean, I've followed the Nick Ball journey for quite some time. I'm just having a look now on our channel to see when I paid a visit to Everton Red Triangle, and I'm not sure how long ago it was, 4 or 5 years now, and they had a massive raft of talent coming through from the amateurs, including Nick Ball, Brad Strand, a number of others. And he's the one that's really progressed so far. Andrew Kane was another one. I don't think he was there on the day, though. And Nick Ball's just progressed magnificently. A lot of people said, oh, he's too short. He's, he's only got one style, which I don't think is true. But if, the style you prefer to use is working, why would you change it? And the people have said, his detractors have said, he's going to find his level. He's not versatile enough. He hasn't got that extra gear, but he just keeps winning. And against guys of the caliber of Isaac Dogbe, who's a former world champion, of course, that was a thrilling fight. And one Nick Ball won clearly, but not without, taking a bit of punishment in his own right. That was an excellent fight to watch. And Nick Ball now stands on the precipice. And the only thing that worries me from his point of view in this fight is the experience level of Ray Vargas, particularly at that top level. You know, he has been a world champion for quite some time. He has fought a lot of different styles. I'm sure he'd have fought someone like Nick Ball in the past, you would think, unless Nick Ball's completely unique, someone similar at least. And just having that experience of the big occasion, you know, Nick Ball seemed like an unflappable type. And I don't think he'll be overly bothered by being on a Joshua show, Riyadh season, Saudi Arabia, the bright lights, all of that stuff. He's you know, very mild-mannered, focused kind of guy. But Ray Vargas will have experienced all this before. It's not the first time that he's defended his title. And he won't have any plans to give it up without a real scrap. And I think it's a bigger step up in class, or much bigger step up in class, if we're being honest, for Nick Ball than it is for Vargas. For Vargas, we don't know for certain if it's a step up until they get in there, but he's certainly fought at the highest level already, whereas Nick Ball hasn't yet. So he's either going to rise to the occasion and show something we haven't seen before, or show that his natural style translates to that level, or he's going to fall short. And I'm not entirely sure which way this one's going to go. I think for me, this is the hardest one to pick on the show. Ramoni Mode XD says, guys, what do you think about Ryan's tweet yesterday, which looked a bit crazy? Is he doing it for attention? We'll talk about Ryan Garcia a bit later if we get a chance. But we want to stick on topic for the moment. But yeah, we will get into Ryan Garcia in a bit. Just talking about the undercard though, because that's kind of the pick of the undercard. The rest of it, or a lot of it, looks like it's kind of Frank Warren Friday night York Hall show. It's been they've been transported all the way to Riyadh, but it's the same show. You got Jack McGann against Lewis. I mean, these aren't bad fights, by the way. They're very good fights, but they're more in line with what you would see at a York Hall show. Jack McCann against Lewis Green. Who else? Roman Fury against Martin Svark, if I've pronounced that correctly, probably not. Who's it? Oh, Mark Chamberlain against Gavin Gwynn. I mean, that's a big step up for Mark Chamberlain. Gavin Gwynn won the European title in his last fight. That's going to be a tough one, I think, for Chamberlain. I know they've been kind of guiding Chamberlain and Sam Noakes along similar paths, hoping that that'll be a action-packed in-house clash at some point. Well, Gavin Gwynn could well upset the apple cart here. He'll be going into this incredibly confident. He won't see himself as the underdog in this fight by any means. I haven't had a look at the odds, but it could be a very exciting fight to watch. Gavin Gwynn's all action, always in entertaining contests. Jack McGann, good to see him once again, former MMA fighter, of course. We had him on the channel a number of times. Lewis Green always gives his all. Seen him box a couple of times as well, including live, I think. So I'm looking forward to the undercard, but it's not. I think the star-studded elements of the show are very much at the top of it. Would you agree, Josh?
Yeah, I'd agree with that one. I saw Louis Green against Sam Gilly, I think it was, a couple of months back. Absolutely terrific fight. Incredible fight. They both gave absolutely everything they had to offer, and despite coming out on the wrong end on that occasion, I think he's probably earned the opportunity he's been given here. Also watched Mark Chamberlain on my many visits to York Hall over the years. Thank you very much for posting me there, Danny. Much appreciated. And, he's an excellent fighter, Mark Chamberlain, but I think, as you mentioned there, he's done it at a certain level, in a certain sort of environment, and the environment that he's faced in York Hall is going to be very different to what he's going to see out in Saudi. Gavin Gwynn's probably got a little bit more of that experience at that top sort of level. He's got that European title under his belt now, and I am a little surprised they've pulled the trigger as such on Chamberlain quite as early as they have, especially with that Noakes fight sitting there, and you say that it looked, although they were sort of on a collision course to face each other. So I'm surprised they've pulled the trigger on the Gwynn fight so early, but if he goes and wins that, it makes the Noakes fight even bigger. So. Yeah,
we shall see. And like you said, you're a York Hall Friday night veteran, so really you should be in Saudi this week.
Well, yeah, it would be nice, wouldn't it? But I'm afraid Peterborough's going to have to do for me.
They're almost the same. Close your eyes. It's the same place. One heavyweight who won't be on the Knockout Chaos card, but has released some news during the week. This is what Joshua and Fury always used to do. And Hearn and Warren to a lesser extent as well. They'd announced big news during the fight week of the big rival. And I'm not saying this has been done on purpose, but Dillian Whyte got some coverage yesterday because it's been revealed that he's been cleared, quote unquote, by the Texas State Athletic Commission from the adverse finding on his drug test, which was leading up to the Joshua fight, which was obviously cancelled at short notice. And Robert Helenius came in and got appropriately dealt with by AJ. It's an interesting one because no one was really, I hadn't heard any whispers. There wasn't really any articles or anyone saying, well, the decision's coming soon. Because Conor Benn has had his appeal hearing, of course, and we know that decision is expected any day now, according to Frank Smith. He said to you, Josh, not too long ago. But we hadn't heard the similar stuff about Dillian Whyte, presumably because he hasn't got a promoter at the moment to make those comments on his behalf. But it was announced yesterday Dillian Whyte's license is with the Texas State Athletic Commission. He doesn't have a British license at the moment. And it was revealed that he's undergone forensic testing in terms of all the supplements and food and everything else that he'd had, and also the sample that caused the adverse finding in the first place. And it was revealed that it was contamination that was the issue, that not contamination at the lab, let's stress that, but contamination of a product that didn't list the offending ingredient on their packaging, but was found to contain it. Which is an interesting one because we've seen this happen before. I think to Whyte in his ban in the kickboxing days, perhaps, or early in his professional career, this may have been the case. And maybe with Enzo Maccarinelli as well. I could be getting my facts slightly wrong there. We need to check. But I'm sure with Maccarinelli, he was punished for taking a supplement that included a banned substance that wasn't listed in the ingredients. And he tried to use that as mitigation. But I'm not sure how much mitigation or how much benevolence he got as a result of that. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't know what will happen if Dillian wants to fight in the UK again, because he's got that American license from Texas. I'm not sure if the board will allow him to fight as a foreign fighter, which many other fighters have done in the past. But I know they ruled it out, I believe, for Conor Benn while the appeal process was going through. If Dillian Whyte then has to apply for a new UK license, if he wants to fight here, and obviously everything's going on in Saudi at the moment, will the board frown upon the explanation given? Will they go along with it? Will Dillian have to go through UCAD and their own investigation if he wants to fight here again? All these things are up in the air and really weren't answered by Dillian Whyte's interview with Sky Sports from yesterday. So we'd like to have those questions answered, ideally. But more importantly, what are Dillian's plans? He clearly wants to resume his career, but does he want to fight here? Does he want to fight in the US? Does he want to fight in Saudi? He's got a trainer in the US in Buddy McGirt now, of course. So there's a lot to, and how much has Dillian Whyte got left? That's another big question. Can he mix it at the top level of heavyweight boxing? Eddie Hearn was asked earlier today by Radio Raheem, that may actually be live by now, if Dillian Whyte still has a chance of nabbing that AJ rematch or trilogy, if you count the amateur fight as well. And Eddie said no. He said Anthony Joshua's only got between 4 and 7 fights left in his career, and he's chasing only the very biggest ones. So it's unlikely that Dillian Whyte will get another shot at AJ. So what is there for Whyte? What would he like to achieve? Does he want another world title shot after what happened against Tyson Fury? He might want redemption for that. Does he just want to mix it in the very biggest domestic clashes? We wait to hear from him. But Josh, what did you make of the news when you heard?
Yeah, big news, and for me, just came a little bit out of nowhere. I'd gone a little bit quiet on sort of the Dillian Whyte front. So hearing the news as I did, it was a little surprising, and yeah, sort of thrusts himself back into that scene and back into a thriving heavyweight scene as well. We've already talked about the likes of Zhilei Zhang and Joseph Parker. The name Joe Joyce has come up. These are all potential options for Dillian Whyte now if he is able to fight in certain territories. Would that fight happen over in the US? Will he be invited, or will he be able to go over and fight in Saudi? He's obviously fought over there once before. So there's so many options for Dillian Whyte, and he's just another name to sort of push into that mix. The worry is, after the sort of controversy that he's faced, our promoter's going to want to give him the opportunity after all of this. Eddie's obviously already come out and spoke to Raheem today and said that the AJ fight is off the table. that's from an Anthony Joshua point of view, an Eddie Hearn point of view, of course. But if there's a big fight on the table, are the promoters gonna want to give him that? I guess we'll wait and see, and we'll wait and find out. I think he still has a lot of pulling power. He could still sell out a big arena. We've seen him do it at the O2 before, and I think he still has the power to do that. So someone like a Joe Joyce would be a good fit, I think, as a comeback fight. Daniel Dubois there. There's options for Dillian Whyte, and it just takes one win in the heavyweight division, one big win, and he can put himself right back in a position where he's not too far away from a world title. And I wouldn't be wholly surprised. I mean, he's only been out the ring around 15 months, so we've seen longer exits from the ring. So I guess we'll see with Dillian.
I mean, fortunately, given those comments from Eddie Hearn, the options that you just listed for Dillian Whyte are all predominantly in the Frank Warren side of the divide, although it isn't such a divide anymore. But Frank Warren said earlier he'd be happy to work with Dillian Whyte in the future if there's no ambiguity about these issues with PEDs and the results and so on. DB Cooper 1, man, that's just about Josh's carbon emissions, which, he tried to keep it in. Derek Rossi says, fourth time this has happened to Dillian. Anyone else would be done for negligence or recklessness. I'm not sure you can be done for negligence or recklessness in this case, but I accept your point. And what Josh said as well about will promoters want to work with him, he has got that name value, he has got that notoriety, but the flip side of that is the AJ fight had to be rearranged on very short notice because of something that happened with Whyte. Whether you believe it's his fault or not is kind of by the by at this point. Do you want to take that risk? And then you've got the Oscar Rivas fight, which by rights probably should have been postponed. Whyte obviously attended the hearing on the morning of the fight. He was allowed to go ahead. But Rivas and his team had no knowledge of it until after the fight. So it is a risk in that sense. If you're a promoter and you can pick someone who's got similar name value or slightly less name value, but you can be almost certain that they're not going to pull out or have an issue that prevents them from fighting at short notice, you're probably going to go with that one, aren't you, to safeguard your show and your profit margins. And I can't imagine Dillian Whyte is cheap either. I imagine he commands a healthy purse, and so he should, considering the levels he's fought at and the fights he's been involved in. DB Cooper 1 says, I have doubt about Whyte, but at least he went through an actual investigation with a proper body. Unlike Ben, who has still not faced a real investigation due to jurisdiction, and no, the WBC don't count. I'm not sure about the details of the investigation by the Texas State Athletic Commission. I read it on Sky Sports, and I could be wrong, but I read it as an investigation had been launched by perhaps Whyte and his team rather than and then they presented that investigation or the results of it to the Athletic Commission, who accepted it, it's compelling evidence, and decided to reinstate his license. I'm not so sure if it was the Athletic Commission that launched the investigation themselves. But there'll be different rules for different places as well, and whether the ingredients not being listed on a supplement is acceptable mitigation or not. There is a strict liability rule with UCAD, for example, here in the UK, and I'm not sure that would be considered enough. It might lessen any punishment that happens, or it might help him get his license back, but I'm not sure it'll be a cure or panacea in this case. Derek Rossi says it would set bad precedent if fighters can clear themselves using foreign boards who may have less strict processes and then automatically be allowed licenses anywhere. Well, yeah, I mean, Conor Benn's been cleared, in theory, by the WBC, but the WBC aren't a governing body. They're a sanctioning body, and there are distinctions. And if Conor Benn wants to fight in the UK again, obviously the issues with UCAD and the Board of Control need to be sorted out, which is going through at the moment. So we haven't set that precedent just yet. After everything the board have been through with Conor Benn, I can't expect they'll just say, well, Texas have said that Dillian Whyte's innocent and cleared, so we'll clear him. I imagine they'll have their own process to follow. DB Cooper 1 says, if UCAD can't investigate a UK licensed fighter who failed a VADA test, how on earth would they investigate one licensed in Texas who failed VADA? Well, isn't that the whole point? That UCAD levied the suspension against Conor Benn in that previous case that you're referring to. And Conor Benn's, that's been appealed. Conor Benn's suspension was then lifted by an independent panel, and UCAD and the board are both appealing against that, the result of which we'll see soon. So they obviously feel they can suspend a UK licensed fighter in that case. And I'm not saying they can investigate Dillian Whyte now. They've got no reason to. But if Dillian were to apply for a new British license, then perhaps they'd launch an investigation. I'd certainly expect there to be some sort of hearing if that was the case. Derek Rossi says, what then stops UK fighters getting foreign licenses early in their career, knowing they have a safety net if they pop? Yeah, I mean, I think Tyson Fury, hasn't he had an Irish license for quite some time? I'm not saying for that reason by any means. I'm just saying he has. So it's not uncommon for fighters to have licenses from other countries for all different reasons, by the way. So, yeah, I mean, I suppose nothing really stops them getting that. But as I said, I don't think that automatically means they'll be able to fight in the UK. Ronnie Road XD says Jarrell Miller, I think he means, versus Dillian Whyte. Yeah, I can see where you're going with that. Derek Rossi says Texas board clearing carries more weight than WBC clearing, but still, if BBUFC and Texas follow different methods. Yeah, exactly. I don't think one naturally leads to the other. I think if UCAD had done an investigation, if the fight was in the UK and Whyte was licensed in the UK, if they'd done an investigation and cleared Dillian Whyte, then I think the board would follow suit because that's the drug use body that they work with is UCAD. It's only recently that they've kind of acknowledged VADA. So, yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a minefield. But looking at the boxing side of it, I'd like to hear your views on this in the chat. How much do you think Dillian Whyte's got left? Can he mix it at a certain level? How easy would it be to make those fights? Because we talked about all the heavyweights that are queuing up behind Fury and Usyk, including Joshua, Zhang, Parker, Dubois, I mean, I could go on and on. Where does Dillian Whyte fit into that mix? Josh, do you think he's going to be waiting a long time for a big fight? And do you think he'll want to rebuild from a lower level? Do you think, if he's not getting one of those big fights, will he walk away?
I think he'll struggle to rebuild from a lower level in terms of the money that he'll be offered for those fights. He'll want to jump into a big fight where he's going to have a big payday and he's going to be sort of shown to a big audience. But I'm not sure really that's going to be on the table for Dillian Whyte. I'd expect him to have one, quote, warm-up fight to get himself back into shape and get himself back in a position in the ring. And then maybe they can pull the trigger on somebody who's waiting around for a fight. Will he be seen as a light touch by people because he's taken so long out the ring? That's someone like a Zhang or a Parker. If they don't get their opportunity next, will they look at the name value of a Dillian Whyte to get them on their resume when he's coming off 18 months out of the ring and he's gone through this investigation, which may have weighed on his sort of mental capacity a bit more? Then there's the option of that, but sort of I'd like to see him thrown into a big fight. I think a Whyte versus Joyce would be really intriguing. I think Whyte versus Parker or Zhang would be an intriguing fight as well. A name that's often avoided, Martin Bakole. Would we like to see Martin Bakole against Dillian Whyte? We'd like to see Martin Bakole against any of those names I've mentioned. So look, there's options for Dillian Whyte if he can get through camp and get a win on the record. Then maybe some of those options will be there, but it's not going to be at an elite world title level, in my opinion. He's going to have to take a chance, roll the dice against somebody who's probably on the fringes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is his best opportunity, is that someone will see him as a name that's on the way down, the way prospects have been building their careers for years, but it's what level those people will be at and how much value they perceive a win over Dillian Whyte gets them on the world stage. Someone like, if they weren't good friends, someone like a Fabio Wardley is, someone who's dominated pretty much now at domestic level and is ready. We've obviously see what happens against Fraser Clark next week, but someone who's dominated previously at domestic level and wants to make that, next step to world level, or someone who wants to be fast tracked to world level. So Fraser Clark, if he comes through, even a Moses Itama who's very early in his career, but then there's got to be something in it for Whyte as well. That's the difficulty. So it needs to be, like a Bakole, because he's ranked number 1 with the WBA, I believe. And I'm sure they take that fight. I'm sure they jump at the chance, Billy Nelson and the Bakole team. So yeah, maybe that's a good shout. Might have to You should text Billy Nelson, Josh, and then get him to call out.
I'm on it, Danny.
Yeah, get him to call out Dillian Whyte on Seconds Out. Call out on Seconds Out. That's what we want to see. All right, so we have got a poll going. I've mentioned this a couple of times already, but for anyone new joining us, please do vote. It's a method of victory poll for Joshua against Ngannou. Who wins and how? Let us know what you think. We'll read the poll results out at the end of the show. But just before we do leave you to your own devices, we've got one more main topic to cover. It's something that came up earlier in the week, or sorry, not earlier in the week, 'cause it's Monday today, came up last week, and that was the reveal of some quite old sparring footage, not old as in grainy, but old as in, a few years now, when Devin Haney was still a teenager. Apparently he was 16. That's what he said later in a tweet that addressed it. With him getting pretty much bashed up, I think it's fair to say, by Gervonta Tank Davis, or the artist formerly known as Tank Davis. And Haney would later claim that he was holding his own, but the clips had been edited in a fashion to make it look quite the opposite. And also that they'd been released by Floyd Mayweather, who is close to Tank, in an act of jealousy or envy, that Haney is looking really great as a fighter and Floyd's time has passed as an active competitor. Josh, what did you make of it, and have you seen the clips in question?
Yeah, I've seen the clips in question. I understand the points that are being made regarding it being clipped up, and I think it was only about 90 seconds, 2 minutes of footage from a 20-minute spar, and I think you could do that with any spar and make it look one-sided. You can read into the footage that's there and see it as a sort of one-sided beatdown as it was. It's plain to see in the clips that are available, but if you were to see the full picture, the full 20 minutes, would it look the same, or would it look like Devin Haney was sort of holding his own against an older and a more experienced and a more mature opponent in Tank Davis? Possibly it would, possibly it wouldn't. It's all speculation, but what I will say is that he was 16 years old. He wasn't fully mature in the ring. He hadn't got his man strength, and Tank Davis was early 20s, around 22, I believe. So there's a lot more development that's come from him in terms of his shape and physique, and of course his training inside the ring as well. So whether or not you look at it as he was getting completely beat up, or whether you think there's more to the sparring footage, I think there's been a lot of development since from Haney's side.
Yeah, so it's Spar Wars Revenge of Floyd. I may have put this wrong in our group chat, but it should be Revenge of the Floyd. It's supposed to be like an homage to Revenge of the Sith. But it's all right. It's one of the more underappreciated Star Wars movies anyway. But yeah, it seems a strange timing as well, because obviously Haney's got his fight coming up against Ryan Garcia. Floyd Mayweather works with Tank, but Tank's got nothing to do with Haney at the moment. It's not like they're about to fight. This isn't part of a pre-fight build-up. So maybe there is issues, or there are issues between Haney and Mayweather. And this is a kind of stick to beat him with, if you like. But it's a strange one, because even if that was an accurate reflection of the sparring that took place, which a lot of sources say it wasn't, even if it was, surely it illustrates just how far Devin Haney's come from that 16-year-old version. And perhaps in comparison, how Tank hasn't progressed quite as much. Certainly hasn't been in the big fights as much as Haney has. There's no doubt in Tank's talent or his commercial drawing ability, but, he's never been an undisputed champion. He's barely been a full world champion in any of the divisions he's been in. And, what's his biggest fight? What's the biggest fight he's been involved in? Is it Santa Cruz because of the highlight reel knockout at the end? Perhaps. I don't know. But, Haney has had some big fights already, and against Ryan Garcia, it'll be one of the most talked about fights of the year. So maybe it is a bit of envy, a bit of jealousy. What's the chat saying? DB Cooper 1 says, didn't Roger Mayweather say it wasn't that bad and Haney was doing well? Shame on Floyd for leaking the clips. Very shallow even for him. Haney was only 16. Ronnie Road XD, there's a video online with Elijah versus Gervonta, and it looks much like this clip with Gervonta getting outclassed. Yeah, I mean, what is it? History's written by the victors, isn't it? It's one of those. Whoever's filming it at the time can make it look like whatever they want. Derek Rossi says, with Devin being 16 at the time, what do you think of the scientist TalkSport had on saying boxing for under 18s is child abuse? I didn't know this TalkSport story. It's just Frank Warren was massively slagging off TalkSport earlier on behalf of Tyson Fury, mostly. To be fair, he did have a few kind words for them in his own right, but no, he didn't. He didn't share this with me. He was talking about which countries have space agencies. That was more of a riposte to Carl Froch, but you really should watch the interview itself for context. Yeah, I mean, I obviously don't think boxing for under 18s is child abuse. I've taken my son on the pads and stuff. I'd have no problem if he wanted to go to a boxing gym when he's a bit older, although he's very into football. Yeah, I mean, I obviously don't think that. I wish someone would have taken me to a boxing gym when I was that sort of age. I never even went into a gym or did the pads or anything for the first time till I think I was 24. I feel like I missed out a bit because obviously I love boxing and I'm absolutely shit at it. But, you know, maybe if I'd have gone younger, maybe I wouldn't have been quite so bad. But, yeah, I don't think it's child abuse. I think boxing, what it instills in young people, whether it's teenagers, young adults, or whatever, far outweighs the negative side. You know, the discipline, the camaraderie, the just generally the behaviour elements. There's so many positives to getting involved in sport generally from a young age, but particularly boxing. I think. I mean, I'm speaking from quite a biased position. I've been around boxing for most of my adult life, but yeah, I mean, I would need a lot of convincing that it's any type of child abuse to take a kid down the boxing gym. And obviously, there's precautions that can be made for children and junior amateurs compared to adult and senior amateurs. So it's not like you go in and you're thrown in and sparring straight away, or you're not wearing head guards and all that kind of stuff. A lot of precautions are taken to protect people that need or want that level of protection. I don't think there's any issue with it. But we've gone off on a bit of a tangent there. Ramoni Mode XD said, I think head trauma is a problem for sure, but not child abuse. Yeah, I mean, I think when the brain's still growing and developing, obviously it's an issue taking too many blows to the head without adequate protection. But I don't think there's a long history of CTE or brain injury from people who were amateur boxers but never turned pro. Even less so people that were junior amateurs and never went senior. So I'm not sure we should be too worried about that. Maybe in the pros, yeah. I mean, a lot more investigation needs to be done in those links. Derek Rossi says, yeah, I think it was specifically about sparring and taking head punches. It shouldn't be a payoff can have camaraderie without head damage. They're not mutually exclusive. No, I completely agree. But that's kind of what I'm saying, that the limited amount of negatives that come out of training in boxing are far outweighed by the positives. I'm not saying that getting a brain injury is a limited negative. I'm saying that getting a brain injury as a young amateur can be completely avoided. DB Cooper 1. Anyway, I heard Amir Khan's gone AWOL just like Ryan Garcia. Oh no, Amon Khan. I was going to say Amir Khan did something only recently. No, he's not gone AWOL. We're still in touch with Amon. We keep tabs on him. We're going to make sure there's no international incidents while he's out in Riyadh. I can't promise he'll come back with a fresh trim, though. That's the only thing. But, there's lots of good barbers in Riyadh, lots of good everything in Riyadh, from what we're led to believe. Listening to the first 5 minutes of Eddie Hearn's interview with Radio Rahim, you'll be forgiven for thinking he's got a new job with the Riyadh Tourist Board. So effusive is he in his praise for the local everything, really. Local cuisine, local everything. But you should watch it. It's a very interesting watch with Eddie Hearn. DB Cooper 1 says, what did Amir Khan do? No, he didn't do anything. His recent comments or interview or something. Oh, no, that was it. I saw him on Instagram. Not Skype. I saw him on Instagram congratulating Adam Smith for a new job that he's taken on, guiding sports stars, managing them, and so on. New venture that Adam Smith's got going. He's going to be speaking to Josh Green about that soon. Josh, you must be looking forward to that conversation.
Yeah, I really like Adam. I've had a pleasure of knowing Adam for a number of years now through boxing and my work in darts as well. So, Adam's a top bloke, a very, very knowledgeable person, always has a lot to say, a very analytical mind when it comes to boxing. So, yeah, I really enjoy speaking to Adam. He's always very, very good with his time, and yeah, he's a good man to speak to. So I look forward to seeing what he has to say about the fight this weekend, Fury, Usyk, and everything we've got going on in boxing, because it's been a little while since since I've had a chat and since anybody's really had a long sit down with Adam. So it'll be interesting to see and hear what he's got to say.
And DB Cooper 1 agrees. He says, good to have Adam Smith back. Top bloke and a legend of British boxing on the comms, especially on big fight nights. He is Dev Sarni's favourite ever boxing commentator. There you go. Because I remember Dev telling me, and I was quite surprised, not because Adam's not an excellent commentator, he is, but he's kind of not the cool choice, is he, to say. But yeah, Dev said there's no one like it for calling the big fights. So there you go. I'm happy to be the conduit for that peers compliment there. So before we go, we did put out a poll at the start of the show. Anthony Joshua against Francis Ngannou this Friday, headliner of Knockout Chaos. Who wins and how? And let's see what you guys decided. Quite a big 47%, so almost half of you think Joshua is going to win by knockout or stoppage. Wow, that's quite a dominant victory, that, which is kind of what you're predicting, I guess. Ngannou KO comes second at 29%. Joshua points 20%, and only 2% for Ngannou on points. I hope that level of expectation is reflected in the odds at the bookmakers. Because to be fair, I can't see Ngannou winning on points. I can't see any way that happens. But a lot of people thought Ngannou was unlucky not to get the decision against Tyson Fury. So maybe there is something in that. DB Cooper 1 says, oof, Francis being KO'd. It ain't that easy, bruv. It ain't that easy, bro. Who do you think you are? Will Ospreay? Little niche reference there. Yeah, I mean, it is easier said than done, but I think accumulation, later rounds of the fight, Joshua more used to the pace. And Joshua is a combination puncher. He's not someone who's going to take you out there with one shot, but he is a good finisher. So, I don't know. I mean, I haven't made my official pick yet, but I definitely think Joshua's going to win. I don't know. I think I probably would go for Joshua KO, but we shall wait and see. Really thankful for you all for joining us. Please do give us a thumbs up if you haven't already. Subscribe if you've not already done so. And if you are watching this on playback, you've missed out on the hilarity of our live chat, typical hilarity. You can still comment on the playback, and we will respond to some of those comments later on. Really appreciate you watching. Josh, as is customary, you are the co-host on this occasion, so you get the closing comments.
Well, yeah, we've got a lot coming up over the next few days out in Saudi. Eamon, Raheem, and Frank over there. I've just seen the Eddie Hearn interviews gone live, so that's going to be my first port of call once I'm off this live stream. I'll try and bring some better retro football merch next time I'm on the pod, and thank you very much for watching.
Yeah, you should have been like someone from the Saudi league, surely. It should have been like Al Atifak or someone like that.
I'll get it sorted, Danny.
Yeah, all right. Cheers, guys. See you next week.